Thanks for joining us on Coast to Coast Pest Talk.
Great. Okay. Well, welcome, guys, to Coast Pest Talk. I'm your host, Gabe Seymour with Pest Patrol, joined here by Andy Sinevsky with Perimetech Pest Management. Thanks so much for tuning in. And we're going to be discussing something pretty fun today, compensation and incentives, and particularly in this episode, some of the pitfalls of if you do this incorrectly. So let's jump in here.
Yeah, so I wanted to talk a little bit about compensation and incentives. It's something that's been on my mind a bunch, and I keep trying to implement incentive plans in my business, much to the chagrin of my wife, who like we co-run the business together. And she keeps shooting me down, and it's usually for good reasons. Like, I don't know why I feel like I have to give away money all the time, but I have this strong desire to, like, I'm supposed to have an incentive plan, right? I'm supposed to have some sort of thing. I keep trying to do it, but it has never. Have you done incentive plans or things like that?
Not really. We'll do it on kind of like, actually right now I have an incentive plan with my guys to reach 100 reviews.
Oh, okay.
Which we'll actually talk about in here, some of the probably potential pitfalls of that. But so I don't have anything formal. We do it more case by case if we're trying to hit a goal or if we're trying to, that type of thing, to leverage certain actions.
Yeah. And for today, I wanted to talk more about like the principles behind it.
Yeah.
Like what makes up a good incentive and a bad incentive, or, pay structures that work with your business or against your business, as opposed to the tactical necessarily. I think that, and that was where I would fail a lot of times, is that I would jump right into the tactical. Like, oh, well, I mean, literally the other day we were looking through our CRM and I came across this thing in our CRM where I could track how many jobs per day were done and billed this way and that way and whatever. And I was immediately going, oh, hey, we could tie an incentive based on this to this number and whatever. And my wife goes, why? Like everything's, what are you trying to do with that? Like, what are you trying to get out of that? What behavior are you not seeing from the technical staff currently that you're trying to encourage?
Yep.
So don't go mucking around in there. So I think the principles behind it, of like how it works for people, is what we should talk about today.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think the one at the top of my list to start right off was basically your base compensation, how that works. And I don't know if you've come across this, Gabe, but there's a big time divide, and it's usually like a north-south divide between hourly and production based. Which way do you guys pay your guys?
I actually pay my team in gold.
Okay. Gold bars.
We do hourly. And actually, when we first started, and this isn't even on here, when we first started, I did salary.
Wow. Okay.
Which was actually a fairly good way to hire some really good employees and get them to stay on when you didn't have enough full-time work for them. But I would not recommend that. Don't do that. It's not a good idea.
Did you see some problems with that? What happened?
Mixed bags. So some of the guys, a lot of this and all of this stuff we're talking about, the character of your team matters so much, who you're hiring, the type of people. So I had a couple techs that it was like no problem. They're working 50 hours a week. They don't care. They're like, it can be salary, it can be hourly. Like, I'm going to put in the hours. And then you had some who were cutting all their days short.
Yeah.
Right. So it was a mixed bag, but it ended up being easier to just track with hourly.
Yeah. Okay. So we've never done production-based pay.
Yeah. Neither
we've never done it. I know a lot of people like this. And so if somebody listening doesn't know what that is, so if you have a technician that goes out there and he does a day's worth of work and it invoices $1,000 or whatever, they would get their pay for that day would be based on a percentage of what that dollar amount was. The next day they go out and it bills $2,000. They get a percentage of what that is. It's basically like a commission plan. Based on how much you produce. So, I've never liked it. I like, for me, when I see production-based pay systems, all I think of is, okay, how does that guy, what does it encourage that technician to do? If they're going to be interested in making more money, it's going to force them towards packing more jobs into every single day, which sounds great from the business's point of view. Well, yeah, okay, so why don't we bill $3,000 a day, $4,000 a day? Put as many jobs as you can possibly fit, and he's willing to do on the day, pay him production. But what almost universally happens is you start to make compromises in the amount of time that you're spending at each one of those jobs. If it takes you a certain amount of time to do a certain amount of work, you can't do more work in that same amount of time without shorting something.
Right.
Like there's just no way around it. I understand the appeal because it is much easier to manage from like the office's standpoint. So for me, I wouldn't have to keep track of people's schedules and routing and make sure everything's just right. It's, you just throw the jobs out there and say, well, here's your jobs for the month. Get them done whenever you want. I don't care, because you're going to only get paid production. If you lollygag and do 2 jobs a day, you're not getting paid anything. So I don't care.
Right.
So I feel like it's a way for management to sort of wash their hands of managing. And the party that takes the brunt of that is the customer.
Yeah.
I think, so I felt like you have to match that base compensation package to your economic ratio that drives your company. And we've talked about this a little bit before. If people don't know, your economic ratio is like how you do better as a company. So for us, our economic ratio is our profit per customer lifetime. So the lifetime of the customer grows and we grow our profit with that customer. That's how we that's like the core bedrock underneath all the other decisions that we end up making. Now, if we have, and with that, we have an hourly compensation program, because I feel like it works with that, increasing that customer lifetime. So if you were on a production-based compensation plan, you inherently are going to be on a different economic ratio than what we are. You're not looking to extend, not that you're not looking to extend the customer's life with you, but you are definitely, your economic ratio is looking at profit per route or profit per day or profit per technician. The whole way you're compensating your staff is based on increasing that productivity every single day to maximize it. So you're billing as much as you possibly can for the hours that person is working.
Right.
Which in and of itself is fine. If that's what your vision is and that's what you're trying to do and that's how the business is put together, that's great. If you have a mismatch between these is where you start to run into major problems. If you make your decisions based on, say, profit per route or profit per day, but then you're saying that, no, we're all about customer service. We're the best customer service organization, and that's our vision, and those are our values, and you really hammer on those. Well, you're compensating people in a way that drives them in the exact opposite direction.
Yes.
So now you have a cognitive dissonance between what you're saying and what people are seeing you actually do and how your company's actually put together. So I think understanding that trade-off is the important part here. It's not that one is good and the other is bad. I think it's about knowing what you're saying when you choose one of these routes.
Yeah. And so initially when you were talking about that, because I've never done that with my team either, doing the production based, but I've heard that especially with the larger companies, that's pretty common.
Yep.
The initial things that come into my mind is like, oh, well, Andy, all you have to do is you can just add a maximum number of stops per day or something, right? That would fix it. But I was thinking about that, like if they're truly paid on production, then they're going to be incentivized. You're like, okay, you can only do 10 per day. So they're going to try and do 10, in 4.5 hours.
Right.
As
Yeah.
fast as humanly possible, because they're not making any more money. And so the only way to make more money is to cut corners, basically.
Sure.
So even if you take that model and you try and manipulate it so it kind of is more customer focused or something, you put a maximum, they're still incentivized to basically cut corners because we want to make more money. That's just normal.
There you go. Well, and what does that do when a customer needs extra help?
Right.
You get a call back, you have something in between, so it's a non-billable service. You've got to go out to Mrs. Smith's house to take care of something that got goofed up, or we had this call today. There were bees on the flowers out front of the house. And you got to go out there and take a look at that. Yes, you got to fix that problem. But you have to do those things.
Yeah.
And so if that's a $0 job, the technician has no interest in going out there to Mrs. Smith's house and talking to her about her bees on her flowers and how pollinators are important, and no, we're not going to spray her flowers. Actual conversation today.
Nice. So you didn't just go spray her entire house and all of her hedges and stuff.
Yeah, the whole neighborhood, everything. So
yeah, that's totally right. It de-incentivizes loving your neighbors.
Absolutely. And you know what? Honestly, this is the number one thing that ends up making commercial clients call us. Like when we get inbound stuff that comes in, it's usually not because the technician didn't know how to check the stations and do the logbook and all the standard stuff. It's that, hey, we needed help. And we raised our hand and said, hey, we need help. And nobody came, or they ignored it, or they said they were going to come, or the technician called us 3 times and rescheduled and couldn't make it today, couldn't make it tomorrow, because that poor technician is probably trying to make ends meet, trying to fit jobs that bill into his day, does not want to go back to this, facility that has a $0 job on it. It runs counter to taking care of the customer, which again is fine. Just own that. You kind of just have to own that. You're not really trying to take care of the customer the best way you can. Your compensation plan is not designed to do that.
Yeah. So you would have to have some sort of a company vision that's like more monetarily focused, or our goal is to grow the most cost efficient, right, economically focused pest control company. Like, great, cool.
That's fine. I mean, it's not my cup of tea. It's not what we're trying to do, but other people, I mean, there's customers for every type. We've run it, especially in the commercial space. There's a lot of customers that we've run into that don't really give a flip about really having quality work done at their service site, their store. They're, a retailer that has 20,000 locations all over the place. They just want to check a box that somebody showed up at some point and did something. They don't care what. Those aren't our customers, and there's a place for that service provider, in that market.
Yeah. And I think as well, like that, the incentive, we've been sort of talking from the technician side, but I think about from like a customer care side as well, or like your front desk, who they may be often, I'm sure, getting paid on some sort of a commission plan as well, especially in larger companies. Hey, you sell this number of services when they call in. And it reminds me, we had a commercial account that they had flesh flies in their commercial building. It was like just an office space. And so they called into their company, which was a national brand, and they're like, we don't do flies, click. And they called into us, and our office manager was like, can you tell us what kind of flies they are? And she sent us a picture, and we're like, those are flesh flies. You have a dead rodent somewhere. And sure enough, I walk into their basement upon inspection, and there's a dead rodent just sitting right in the middle of the basement. It was like 2 seconds of just asking some questions, loving the customer, could have told you, what the actual problem was. But because it didn't equate in like $1 sale, they basically got hung up on by their existing.
Wow. Now that does bring up a good point. Do you have any kind of like incentives or bonuses or anything for the person on the phone? Do you sell over the phone? Like a call comes in
Yes.
and that person does diagnostics and sells a job or a program over the phone?
Yep, everything's done over the phone, and most of our pricing, because a lot of it's residential. So I actually have basically all of our pricing flat rate on our website.
Sure. Okay.
So yeah, she sells over the phone. They're pretty soft sales because most of the time customers have already seen our site. They already know our pricing.
Yep.
So a lot of times they're just asking some clarifying questions. But no, I don't have any sort of incentive for her to like sell more. That may be something potentially that we do in the future, but I'd be very cautious about
sure.
how I do that.
Now, I wonder, I mean, we have a super small sample set here.
Yeah.
But in companies that I've talked to that are on the real small size, it seems to me that there's a lot fewer incentives and bonuses on the very small companies. And then as you grow, I feel like it's a sign that you're trying to substitute natural motivation that someone has with a monetary coercion, sort of. Like, I know I can't really get you to want to do this, so I'm going to try to manipulate the situation, with compensation or bonuses to get the behavior that I actually want. Because it seems like pretty universal. Littler companies have way less need for these incentives and bonuses, and then as you get bigger and bigger and bigger, there's more and more of these incentives that get piled on.
Yeah, I think that's totally right. And I wonder if some of it is, again, like we talk about, as long as you're being upfront about it, I wonder if some of it is somewhat unavoidable as you grow. Like you not naturally lose your influence.
Mm-hmm.
Your culture is diluting more and more and more,
right?
And you're sort of scrambling. You're dead in the water a little bit. How do I get this? I'm like, well, I got all this cash in the bank. I could trade cash for, it's an interesting. It starts looking pretty good if that means you could get some semblance of culture back.
Do you guys do any merchandise commission? Like if guys sell, stations to commercial accounts or replace them, or insect light traps or that kind of thing, equipment?
No, on merchandise. We do for additional sales. So I do have a commission on, like, if a rodent trapping customer needs their crawl space sanitized, right? So there is in that sense. But no, not on. We don't do that much merchandise sales in the residential world. But
so on the commercial side, way back we used to have that. We would get like $1 per station for replacing, mechanical devices, or certain amount, 10% of a insect light trap sale or whatever. We haven't done that here. One of the things that I worried about with merchandise was that it sort of hits the technician and the account kind of at odds. And what I mean is, like, if you go in there and be like, hey, oh, this trap is busted, this trap is busted, this trap is busted, and you throw them all away, put them in, you get a commission. And then next month, same traps. Oh, these ones are all broke again. And you put it in more. Like, you're incentivizing that technician to like toss out stations that maybe shouldn't be, or, I always worried that there would be that thought from the customer. They're like, wait a minute, my guy comes in here and like he's replacing stations left and right all the time. That was one of the things I worried about.
And even how it hits your team versus your customer, it hits your customer at a higher dollar value than the incentive to your team, and they are probably not thinking in that way. And if they're looking at trying to rack up as much money as they can, they may unintentionally like really freak out your customer.
Yeah.
Depending on the customer, if they have their bill double because of merchandise, that could put it,
Yeah, no, for sure. And some of these are like the kind of invisible side effects of incentives. So every incentive that you put in, or bonus or commission or something like this, is going to have a flip side to it. There's like a dark side to it all. And except for a couple that I thought of today, and it's funny because as I look at these, the common ones there'll be like a production bonus, there'll be sales commission, those will be merchandise. You can do bonuses on referrals. You can do bonus on getting reviews, things like that. To me, the ones like production and merchandise and things like that kind of have a little bit more, or even sales have a little bit more of a dark side than, say, referrals or
Yeah.
reviews. Because to me, for the way our business is put together, if I incentivize someone to go out there and get referrals, and I don't mean go out and, like, hack people and whatever, and like, you have to give me a referral, but doing a good job and making that good job known to the customer, calling their attention. Hey, I brought the waste cans up to the garbage can up to the garage, and I did this extra thing, and whatever, to get a good referral or a good review. That serves a customer because they're getting top level service, and that serves us because we're getting good reviews and we're getting referrals, and that serves the technician because they're getting a little bump in, hey, you got a review, you get a $20 gift card or whatever the thing is. I feel like all three parties involved make out in that. Like, you're not shorting one party in order for the other two to win in that equation.
Yeah. And you're not necessarily, say, for any of those other ones, you're not necessarily shorting the other customers either, but the temptation is there, and how it looks to your customer. So those are the two things you have to really fight is.
Yeah. And this actually kind of brings us to where what I was ranting last night about, was if you over incentivize something, you are going to enable bad behavior.
Yeah.
Like whatever the thing, you may think it's the greatest thing ever. Let's take, for example, new sales. And you say, hey, every business needs new sales and we want to grow. And if you incentivize those sales with insane commissions, the whole value of the first year of the contract, or, you know what I mean? Like these crazy types of commission programs and bonus programs, you are enabling people. You're almost baiting people into doing things bad. Like, they're going to do anything they can to meet that, to get that bonus, to get that incentive.
Did you say door-to-door sales?
I didn't, but do you get that out of that description? I don't know, Gabe. Well, I mean, I can't say that we haven't seen bad behavior in that market. And I don't think that it's, 20-year-old kids that are college kids doing door-to-door sales in the summer that just think, hey, I'm going to go be a jerk and slander another company and promise everything. And, I'm sure we don't have to belabor all the bad behavior we've all seen over the years. But I think it's more of an incentive problem than it's just like those people aren't bad.
Right.
Just, you're encouraging those kids to do anything they can to get the sale. It doesn't matter what happens on the back end. You could sell 100 accounts and maybe you can only get to 50 of them. Who cares if the other 50 we just don't do their service? Well, Mrs. Jones had a bee's nest she wanted taken care of and nobody shows up. That's not great. And you're incentivizing people to go in that direction. Unless they get this problem under control, it's not a good thing. It's not, in my humble opinion. You're not doing something that's great for the customer. You're doing really only something that's good for yourself, and that's it.
Yeah. Or it might be good for the customer if you could take a very controlled group of very trustworthy people. Like when I went out, because I did some door knocking early with Pest Patrol, which wasn't super fruitful. Probably because I'm too honest. And
you didn't have the right script, Gabe. You need the right door knocking script.
Dang it.
Somebody's got to train you.
Dang it.
Just call someone in Utah. Anyone in Utah, grab the phone book. And anyone in Utah that picks up is going to be able to answer that question for you.
Oh, that's amazing. Wow.
Ahead, man.
That's one of the best things I've heard on this whole podcast. Well done. When I did that, like, I was completely honest, completely transparent, and really loved the people. Okay. But I'm the owner, and so I'm highly, highly, highly incentivized to protect my reputation and my brand.
Yeah.
But these kids aren't. And what they're incentivized by is money. I'm thinking about my brand in 45 years. These kids are thinking about Friday night being able to have some cash for the party.
Yeah.
And those are at odds with loving your customers. And they don't have enough skin in the game if things go wrong to be trusted, I think, to really serve their customers well and faithfully, especially when you make a large sample size. If you got 100 kids door knocking, you're just no way.
One of the things that I've noticed with incentives is that they're going to, whether you want them to or not, they're going to communicate your values. If you understand this, you can use this and guide it in the right way. And this is where Holly has helped me stop us from doing some incentives and bonuses, because she goes, what are you trying to tell people with this? What are you communicating? Any of these actions are communicative, and people learn things a couple different ways. You can tell someone, you can explicitly explain something to someone, but a lot of what people learn, especially about your culture and about your values, is inductive learning. And what inductive learning is it's what they observe around them happening. It's sort of the, hey, I saw Gabe do this thing, that, and then you'll put meaning to it internally and go, okay, I think he did it because of this reason. And to the extent that they're accurate, they learn that way. Oh, right. This is what we do. So with these incentives, you are teaching people what is important to you. And that's why it's super important to understand the incentive that you're putting together. Like you want to know the good side and the bad side. You're de-incentivizing other behavior every single time you incentivize a quote unquote good behavior. And sometimes you're pitting two different things that are conflicting against each other. Two things that you want both of the things to happen, but you're incentivizing one of them and not the other, which means you're telling people, I don't really care about the other, when it could be a very important thing. It could be, I don't know, getting oil changes on the truck all of a sudden isn't very important. You're like, but no, that's important. The trucks need to keep going. So yeah, we don't put enough thought into that, I think, most of the time. I think we just throw stuff out there.
Absolutely. My father-in-law used to always tell me, he'd say, you get more of whatever you incentivize and less of what you penalize. And that's great and true, but like what you're saying is sometimes you get more of what you incentivize, and then there's the hidden thing that you didn't know you were also going to get more of that's coming right along with it.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that we rely on, though, with all of these incentives, and we latently believe this and we're wrong, is that we assume that we're all rational.
Mm-hmm.
We assume that our motivations and our drivers of our actions are rational, and we are not rational actors at all. To me, the way I'm wired, incentives de-incentivize me to anything. I immediately go, no, I'm going to do something because it's the right thing to do, and I have character. And when I have an incentive to do something, I have a bonus or something some carrot that I want on a stick that I'm, going to have to reach for. I want to do that thing less. It's really weird. I'm sort of contrary in that way. Like I'll immediately go, well, wait a minute. If it's not a goal that I want to achieve because I want to achieve it, then I'm not interested in it. And there's no amount of carrot that you can hang out there. The bigger the carrot, the less I want to do it. I mean, it's weird. And I know that's not everybody. Some people need something that they're, kind of going towards.
Yeah. It seems like we kind of talked about maybe towards the beginning of this podcast, this episode, there's other ways often to get the desired result that you want. And sometimes it's just learning better leadership, learning better management, learning better communication, better vision casting for your team that would literally fix whatever you're trying to incentivize. Great. Thanks so much, guys, for listening to Coast Pest Talk. Talking about compensation and incentives today. As always, subscribe to the channel, subscribe to our podcasts, leave us a review. That always helps get the word out, and share this to anyone else that you think would be encouraged or helped by this content. Thanks for listening.